So this many people have now completed the 4 holy sites pilgrimage. Lord Buddha mentioned to Ananda in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta that people with faith, once Lord Buddha had entered Nibbana without remainder, should make the effort to come and pay respects at these 4 sites as an act of recollection of Lord Buddha's life and teachings. He also said that it secured a very potent type of merit that would be of benefit for a long, long, long time. So that's an interesting sentence, long, long, long. And it kind of suggests, there's periods of time where there are Buddha's teaching, and then there's the Buddha's teachings in cyclic existence for a period of time, and then there's a long, long, long periods where there isn't. So this kind of auspicious, powerful merit is very important, because in the duration, suppose not all of you are arahants by the end of Shakyamuni Buddha's dispensation, a long period of time may pass before you meet another Buddha. But when you make this very potent type of merit from paying respects with a heart of faith in these very special places, then you have increased your chances of meeting future Buddhas and future Buddha's teachings, and that's enormously important in this samsaric situation. So, in the beginning part of this trip, when traveling through Uttar Pradesh mostly this time, Uttar Pradesh has a population of 240 million, and it's the second poorest state in India, I believe. And you don't have to actually put much emphasis upon the need to reflect on dukkha when you're traveling through Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, because the roads, the dust, there's a lot of dukkha impinging just through traveling. And of course, when you engage with the local people, many of whom are a little bit desperate, and behavior is not so refined, perhaps as an expression of the difficulties of their life. So we see a bit more, and many of us come from much more comfortable situations than the people of rural Bihar or rural Uttar Pradesh. And so it does take faith, it does take a willingness to work with discomfort, tiredness, the likelihood of becoming ill, because the places are dirtier, there are more sick people, there's more illness, more germs in the air. So it requires faith, it requires commitment, it requires patience, and everybody rose to the occasion very well. I'm very pleased. And just to mention that Ajahn Anan has said, personally said this to me, because he came to India many times himself, and he said that he saw when people paid respects at these holy sites, he could see a stairway to heaven manifest above their heads. Heavens are made of a more subtle form, and one goes to heaven as a result of merit. So when you make a very potent type of merit, then your pathway to heaven opens up. But another thing he said, which is worth noting, is that even if the pathway to heaven opens up above your head, you still need to walk it. You still need to continue to produce merit, you still need to continue to be virtuous, you still need to be focused, because just as a stairway to heaven can manifest above your head, it can also just as quickly evaporate. And if we slip away from sila, if we get distracted, if our mind falls into heavy, dark, we ruminate on negative mind states and get depressed or hold grudges, get addicted to unwholesome forms of entertainment, then different doors might open up into different realms. So when we make a potent merit and the stairway to heaven opens up, we do need to set a kind of a resolution to take care of that merit and to live in a way that we continue to climb that staircase to heaven, because Lord Buddha describes his own teachings as leading to heaven and beyond. So you shouldn't be scared of going to heaven. That's the result of people sometimes think practicing for heaven is a low aspiration, but you need to understand that there's relative safety in samsara, and then there's serious danger in samsara, and it's safer. Human, heaven, and beyond That's the situation from which you can go beyond. Another way Lord Buddha describes these holy sites is the Samvejiniyasathan. Places that when one visits gives rise to a sense of urgency. So I think in some respects it's actually good that we see a lot of dirt, a lot of crowdedness, a lot of poverty. It's not good for those people, of course, we have compassion, but it's good for us that we come and really have a good look. Wow, 240 million people in this state. When you go back to your comfortable and clean condominium, or your spacious house, or your air conditioning unit, or your blue water that flushes down your toilet, and the air freshener in the bathroom that keeps things smelling nice, and we can forget what the majority of human beings experience in this realm. And so we have to kind of set a resolution now not to forget. Sati is sometimes, often in Thailand, is referred to as right recollection. It's like remembering. Avidya, ignorance, is often described as forgetting. So we have to set a kind of a determination. I will remember this samsaric predicament that I'm in. I won't forget my good fortune, and I will build upon it, continue to sow good causes. And we can see, like, everybody here has a very good store of good karma. It's very obvious when you just think back to the breakfast view we had in Pokhara of the Fishtail Mountain and the Annapurna Mountains. I was sitting there thinking, well, this is the nicest view I've seen this lifetime. Even the kind of sights you see, the sounds you hear, the tastes you taste. I think you just attended some kind of food festival, did you? Was it delicious? I suspect it was. May I ask you, in the past 2.5 weeks, how many delicious meals did you have? Many? Yes. Well, this is the result of merit, actually. And then there are other people, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people who eat rice and dal every day in India, the Indian subcontinent, and they consider themselves fortunate if they have that. So we just need to be mindful. There's no guilt trip here. It's just holding a mirror back to you. Recognize what you have. Recognize the causes that led to it. It was actually generosity. You must have nourished others. You must have helped others to have opportunities to experience pleasant feelings, pleasant sights. You've shared a portion of your wealth for lifetimes. You've listened to wise people with attention. You've followed their instructions. You've followed through with discipline. It's the only way that you had the merit to accomplish what you've just accomplished. It's not an easy thing. And you can see even we have to talk a bit about the pervasiveness of dukkha. We have to remember where we are. And you can see it's a very interesting contrast when we go to a place like Bhaktapur. We're all Buddhists. Probably most of us enjoy Buddhist art. It's actually a different kind of suffering, isn't it? When you see so much stuff that's so beautiful, then the hard thing is like, which one to get? And then when you finally decide which thing you want, trying to find the right one, it's like having too much food and eating too much food and getting indigestion. It's too much beauty. At least I had some of that suffering. You kind of need to spend 3 days in Patan and 3 days in Bhaktapur to find the right thing, because there's just so many nice things. And this points to something. It does point to the fact that even heaven-like experiences are still affected by this dukkha characteristic. We're never going to get the conditions perfect in cyclic existence. There's always a fly in the soup. There's always something. And even if it's wonderful, then there's separation. So many of you have probably become good friends. You're probably feeling the nourishment of having kalyanamitta. And tomorrow you all go your separate ways. So there's always separation from the loved, association from the disliked, with the disliked. So this is where we have to set our resolutions. Even though there's merit, even though you have the kind of karma conducive to human and heaven rebirth, that could degenerate. We don't know what could happen in our world. And sometimes I don't, this is the last talk, so I have to get a bit heavy on you, because otherwise you might be heedless. There's all sorts of things I could remind people of, and oftentimes I don't, because no, you've been practicing hard, you've been good, disciplined pilgrims, so I haven't needed to be kind of heavy. But because I train myself to notice the drawback of samsara, to notice dukkha characteristic, this is something that heedful people do. You have to always notice the other stuff, even in the same picture. Because even in a beautiful picture, there's always some ugliness. Even in a pleasant experience, there's always some pain. And for whatever reasons, probably past life practices, I kind of was aware of that as a child. I just became aware of dukkha characteristic quite acutely, quite soon in my life. And I wondered why everyone else wasn't noticing these things. And so today we were looking at these beautiful temples, and yesterday we were looking at these beautiful temples. And one thing you probably don't know is that very regularly they do animal sacrifices at these temples. So we're looking at them beautifully, thinking, oh, how beautiful. But every other day there's goats have their necks slit and blood is splattered all over those very same stones that we're walking on. One of the temple courtyards that we went into yesterday, one day a year, I think 108 goats and 108 buffaloes are killed right there. And the guide says, this is a really special, this is where the royal family used to, once a year, okay, I'll be leaving this place. Bad vibes. Another thing, we're admiring beautiful art. I just heard today that some of the best sculptors, when they tried their best to please the king, and they made a beautiful piece of art, the king, with his royal pride, didn't want the art replicated. He would have the hand of the sculptor chopped off. So I just mention these things to remind us that this is the kind of place we live in. You can be the best artist of your day. You do your best work for the king, and the king chops your hand off. You can be walking in a beautiful courtyard that looks like heaven, and you're walking on yesterday's blood. So, sorry to be so depressing, but I'm just mentioning the truth, right? This is the truth. And this is a large part of what practice is just being present to, aware of, cognizant of, and willing to see with little dust in your eyes. So it's okay to have some fun. It's okay to have a nice meal. It's okay to choose a beautiful item. It's nice to support the local artisans. But we also remember, Lord Buddha says, when we're born, we walk with death. Samsara is the realm of death. When he was looking at his beautiful wife and child, he had the insight that these people are bound by sickness, aging, and death. He had an extremely strong resolution that he was going to do something, try to find the way out, so he could help them and all beings. And fortunately for us, he did. But a large part of it is having a look at dukkha characteristic, being willing to see it truthfully, and then looking at the causes. When we look at the causes, our craving for, our craving not for, and we see the pain that causes us, that's what makes it possible to find the resolution to let go of that craving. So this is why we have to have a look at the dukkha. We have to have a look at the clinging and the craving, because when we see the pain of that, we find the aspiration to let it go. So there's no shortcut. There's a reason Lord Buddha put the First Noble Truth first, because most beings in samsara are trying to run away from it or deny it or blame it on someone else, and that obviously doesn't work. It doesn't liberate anybody. But when you have a good look at it, take more responsibility for what the real cause of suffering is, then we find the resolution based in compassion. A large part of this is understanding that you have the ability, the potential to go beyond it. So when we honor that, respect our potential, honor this capacity that we have, then we find the resolution. This is part of faith, confidence. There is the deathless, there is the unconditioned, there is the path leading to it, and if I follow it, that will be the outcome. And then it's a matter of honoring it, respecting it, living in accordance with it, and just being truthful. So being truthful means not making excuses. Waking up in the morning, the alarm has gone off, press snooze. I don't recommend that. I can't say I never do it, I have to be truthful. But I don't recommend it. Definitely don't press it a second time. But that's the problem, isn't it? If you press it once, you're going to press it again. Luang Por Chah said the best thing to do is when you wake up, get up. Because we want to cultivate wakefulness. We want to cultivate urgency. So if you wake up, probably you've had enough rest. Many times if we meditate a lot and we meditate before we go to sleep, I don't know if this happens to you, but it happens to me often. I wake up just before my alarm. Because the mind knows this is the time we're going to get up. I set the intention, strong, clear intention. So if we cultivate that as a practice, then we wake up, we get up. And then I recommend all the time to my students, meditate first thing in the morning, not last thing at night. If you really want spiritual growth to be a focus of your life, if you want to grow in the spiritual path, progress towards liberation, you can't leave it last. You can't leave it till last. You have to put it first. And even if you're not a morning person and your mind's a bit dull, it's still something we have to do because it's the statement it's making in your heart, in your chitta. You have some barami, you have some virtue, and you have kilesa, and you have hindrances. And when you get up in the morning and you make the effort to meditate, you're saying to your kilesa and you're saying to your hindrances, I'm beginning to deal with you. I'm committed to this. I'm giving you notice. In the beginning, it's dull. In the beginning, it's sleepy. But you're making the effort to get up and you're sitting. It's much, much more powerful than you realize to get up with a dull mind and sit there. I mean, oftentimes we're expecting the mind to feel radiant and peaceful and clear before we think it's powerful. The habit of just getting up when you wake up and sitting is powerful because most other beings are sleeping more and waiting till they feel awake before they sit. Sometimes when you sit and you just have to feel what dullness feels like, feel what sleepiness feels like, and that wakes the mind up. And if we do this every single morning, you'll have much less sleepiness, much less cloudedness in your mind. If you live your whole day, you do every single thing else, all of your work commitments, all your social media comments, all of your entertainment, all of your distraction, all of your eating, all of your nap, whatever it is, in online shopping, and then you think, oh, I need to meditate before I sleep. Is your mind going to be energetic? Is your mind going to be bright? Are the kilesas going to be scared of you? Ajahn Mahabua used to say, don't let the kilesas treat your mind like a doormat. Don't let them walk all over your mind. Respect yourself more than that. So we have to get up when we wake up. Put forth the effort, sit. Sometimes it'll be dull, sometimes it'll be sleepy, sometimes it'll be bright, sometimes it'll be clear. But it's a very, very powerful statement that we make is, I am committed to bringing more clarity to this life, I'm committed to bringing more clarity to this day. And then at the end of your sit, you have to then set the intention, I am going to bring my mindfulness into my daily activities. And if you know you have some weaknesses, this is where another reason it's important to practice in the morning is if you know you have some weaknesses, you're going to say to yourself, I'm going to be careful in that area. When I see such and such at work, who is such a so-and-so, I'm going to see her, see him as my special teacher. That's the one that teaches me patience. When my co-workers want to complain about such and such, as they so often do, I'm not going to join in. Or I'm going to mention to them about a wholesome quality that they have, or remind them of a kind thing that they did. This is the thing about setting up some clarity, setting a good intention. You're a disciple of the Buddha. You are committed to doing good, avoiding harm, purifying the mind. That's different to committing to joining in with every gossip session or every backstabbing session or every coarse, gossipy, harsh speech, frivolous speech. Making a different commitment. Talk about the good things of even the difficult people. We practice forgiveness. We accept that the law of karma is what brings the difficult people into our lives. So we don't want to make more of that. We want to be, as Luang Por Nang calls them, manusa tewo, human beings with deva minds. I once asked Tanajan, can devas become enlightened? He said, only devas become enlightened. Beings who have patience, beings who have conscience, beings who have metta, beings who know how to forgive. Those are the ones who have the minds that can have insights, a certain amount of clarity and brightness in their minds. A thing that is very powerful to do when you do go home is recollect the times when your mind did become peaceful at these holy sites. I've coached several people up to the point of their death, and those people are now Tushita Devas. And one of the things that I would do for them is remind them. Do you remember when you went to the four holy sites? And oftentimes I know which one was their favorite one. And I'd know when they'd had a special experience. When I was speaking to Malin the day before she passed away, do you remember going to Savatthi, Malin? Because she loved Anathapindika in Visakha. And think of Anathapindika placing his gold, and think of his faith, think of Visakha. And I suggested to her, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could go to Tushita heaven and meet them? They're there right now. Just think of them with appreciation. Think of the merit you made. And she smiled. Melina was very interesting because she had the least painful death by cancer that I've ever seen. And part of it was she would do 36 itipisos in the morning, 36 in the afternoon, 36 in the evening. The year before she died, she did 108 itipisos a day, verses in praise of the Buddha. And she knew how to recollect the good karma that she'd made. And she wrote her own letter that her sister was to read for her at her funeral. One of the things she said was, I went to India with Tanajan Achalo 12 times. Even I didn't know it was that many times. I was listening to the letter. Oh, really? She came 12 times. Malin was someone who chanted every day. Malin had a shrine room. So she would go to her shrine room, she'd do her chanting, she'd do her sit, she'd listen to a Dhamma talk. And she would visit the temples a couple of times a week. So she was someone who had very strong faith. And when I was beside her bed, she had mostly seemed okay, but all of a sudden she was in pain and she was wriggling, and I'm thinking, oh dear, what's wrong? And she actually got onto her stomach and angled herself towards me and lifted her hands. She basically took leave. She paid respects. It was the last physical gesture that she made. And not surprisingly, she went to a very happy destination. Because right up to the moment of death, she's thinking of her refuge objects. And she's recollecting the merit that she made. And she's determining to continue to practice. And so it was just very interesting to see it. Like when I was sitting by her bed, another monk popped in, and a couple of days before Ajahn Siripanya went, they weren't invited. You probably couldn't have kept them away. And Malin's dying, the monks are coming to see her. That's the kind of merit she had, because her refuge was very real. She'd helped all of these monks at various times. She'd draw close to them. So they felt close to her. In her time of need, they were by her side. Another lady in Singapore, Siak Hun, she had been a strong supporter of Tenzin Palmo, the lady 12 years in the snow, was it? That lady. It turned out that when she was dying, her teacher was in Brazil teaching. I'd only met her twice, and her husband had asked me if I would consider coming to her funeral. I called up Ajahn Anan and I said, what do you think, Luang Por, should I go? And Luang Por said, what do you think of going to the funeral for? She's still alive, go now. So I met her twice, and I'm by her bed the day she dies, because an Arahant told me I had to go. Now, I would suggest that that's not so common, that a bhikkhu lives in northern Thailand on top of a hill 2 hours to the airport, tickets, and okay. What does it suggest? It suggests that she had the merit to have a bhikkhu by her side helping her to die, even though I'd only met her twice. And she was a lovely lady, and it was an honor to do that for her. One of the things I had to do was all her relatives were putting their hands on her and crying, and I had to be a referee and say, stop that. You love her because she was a good person. This is not the way to treat her. If you loved her, you're filling her with your sadness. Don't be so selfish. Recollect the good things she did for you. Now it's your time to help her. If you want to cry, fine. Go outside and cry. When you come into this room, you offer her your clarity and your goodwill. You share merit with her. Don't you dare fill her body and mind with sadness. And I didn't really know those people. It's quite a fierce thing to say, isn't it? Fortunately, they forgave me, especially when they heard that she was born as a Tushita Deva. I told them what we're going to do is we're going to chant her favorite chants. And Siakun could hardly speak. She could nod and she could blink. And I was like, do you want your relatives to chant for you one more time, or would you like some? She's like, no. Because would you like some quiet time? Yes. But her relatives chanted anyway. They're like, no, we came to chant, we're chanting. I'm like, oh dear. Because otherwise they'd be crying, They didn't know what else to do. So I just said to her, okay, well, you just mentally note the noise and you can turn your mind inwards, and if you see a deva come to collect you, go with them, but you need to understand that they need to do this. And sorry. And she went to a good destination. But again, she was someone who drew close to her teacher, and she supported her in raising funds for a nunnery, and she was supportive of that project for the nuns in India to have a place to practice. Again, we see when someone has potent, powerful merits and the Sangha really is their refuge, the Sangha will be there. And their merit takes care of them when they meet the difficult times in their life. I've seen that in my own life many times, that when there is a difficulty, there's also something that comes and helps. So this is why it's wonderful that you've made potent, powerful merit, and I rejoice. Please take care of it. And, be bold. Stretch your imagination. Many of you feel, I struggle to do 10 minutes. Okay, I might increase to 15. I want you to do better than that. Come on, you just did something heroic and powerful. So I struggle to do 10. So from now on, do half an hour. Come on, put up a fight. Don't let the ignorance and the darkness reclaim all the territory. You've gained some ground. You've been kicking Mara's butt a little bit. Don't let him take it all back. Hope he doesn't come after me now. I can easily sit 8 or 9 hours a day for a month in Bodhgaya now. It wasn't always that way. I had to stretch from 3 to 4, and then 4 to 4.5, and 4.5 to 5, and I had to learn to sit from half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour and a quarter, to 2.5-hour sessions. Now I can do a 3-hour sessions, but that's a 15-year effort. And I've relaxed from 10 now and have come down to 8.5. But I didn't come down to 8.5 until I did it 100 times. Sit 10 hours 100 times. Sat for 11 hours 10 as well. When I got to that level, 10's really hard. When I got to 10, I said, okay, I'm going to do 11 for 10 days now. Because we have to send the message. We can't believe your excuses or your belief about what your limitation is. You have to prove to yourself that you can do better, because you can. I thought, I'm going to do 10, okay, I'm doing 11. Now, because I'm an old man, and I want to keep using my knees until I'm even older man, now I let myself do 8.5. So we can do better, we can do more. And the more we do, the more rewards we get. So one of my earlier teachers used to tell me, it does get easier. And I'm like, I remember when you're a junior monk and you're thinking to try to get through to the end of the rainy season, it seems so long. You've got a 3-month retreat, you're 2 months into it, I don't know if I can make it to the end. 1 more month, right? And it seems like forever. And now I've been doing this for 28 years now. And then Ajahn Sumedho is over 40 and 50, yeah. Ajahn Anan, 40 years, and We just keep going and we just keep doing more, and it gets less difficult. It becomes our habit. I don't think I ever would have imagined that the day would come that I would wake up in the morning and I would be aware of my in-breath after waking up from sleep. And that when I would walk to the bathroom, I would automatically be aware of my footsteps at the bottom of my feet. But that's how it is now. Because all of that, come back to the breath, come back to the breath, come back to the breath. Feel your footprints, feel your footsteps. It gets a momentum. It develops a power, these 5 spiritual powers that lead to the deathless. Faith, sattva, virya, energy. That effort that we make with faith, pumping it into, channeling it into being mindful, that leads to collectedness, gives the foundation for the insight, the wisdom. If we are diligent with our practice and consistent and keep making more effort incrementally, at a certain point the effort takes care of itself and it's not so hard anymore. It becomes second nature to have metta. Not second nature, first nature. For an untrained mind it's second nature, we have to remind ourselves. For a trained mind it's the automatic response. But in your daily life where you might have become irritated, if you've established the capacity to be mindful and have loving kindness, practice forgiveness, as an expression of loving kindness for oneself, you start to feel your irritation, you can feel that you're suffering. You don't want to blame that person anymore. And you will know from your own practice that you can replace that irritation with loving kindness because you've been disciplined with it. So what happens is the reaction begins, you're about to be irritated and you go straight to, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be free from suffering. You can wash away the irritation and replace it with goodwill and hold that goodwill. Then you don't fall into the reaction. If we're disciplined with our effort, these qualities become very powerful. So, please set these resolutions. Make a lot of effort in your sitting, your walking, your chanting, you're listening to Dhamma, you're being mindful in all activities. Do retreats when you can, do pilgrimages when you can. I had a good time, I enjoyed the pilgrimage. I didn't want to say it to anyone because I just wanted to see how it went first and feel it out. But I don't think I'm doing this again this lifetime. So you may have been fortunate in that regard if you attended Ajahn Achala's last pilgrimage. Because I've done this 6 times, you see. This is my 6th trip to Nepal and my 19th trip to India. You know, over 50 now, so I like things like sipping tea and cuddling cats and doing water painting. That's what happens, you see. The mind changes, genteel habits. So I don't know how many more times I want to drag myself to Sarnath and Savatthi and Lumbini. But some of these younger ones that are going to hand the baton to them, they know how to do it now. And Kunlek, she's still got some good energy there. I think she's willing to run a few more pilgrimages if the monks enlist her help. One of the reasons I decided to lead another pilgrimage and make the opportunity available is because I believe that monks must also practice dana. So we have our dana, sila and bhavana, and there's different ways that we practice it. And for me it seems to be a matter of ethics or a matter of morality, that if we have a lot of any one thing, we should be involved in helping others to have that same resource. So for myself, I've been able to do more devotional practice and pilgrimage in India than any other monk I know. So, given that that's the case, I felt I should make a significant effort to help a good number, 2 busloads, to have a similar occasion. So that was a practice of generosity on my part that I was happy to act on. And as I mentioned yesterday, it was easier than I thought it would be because everyone was so well behaved. So I actually had many wonderful meditations myself. And I think probably when we get involved in consciously helping good people to develop their goodness, one also gets spiritual benefits as well. Part of the reason I had some very peaceful meditations and nice insights was probably the merit that you helped me to cultivate. So we have to continue our life as a sacred pilgrimage. We don't leave it at the airport when we land. So I offer these thoughts for your reflection. I hope something I've said has been helpful. If I said anything offensive, please forgive me, as I forgive you.